Hello, everyone. My name is Maureen McDowell, and I'm the founder and executive director of Keep St. Pete Lit. And this is episode 12 of Typewriter Talks. And with Typewriter Talks, we interview Tampa Bay writers and kind of get into their heads about their writing process, their publishing process, and all the good, juicy details that makes somebody want to be a writer. And today we have Tamara Lush with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
She works for the AP, and she also has written romance novels, and she's currently working on a mystery. So let us know what you're working on right now.
So right now, I'm actually writing my second mystery. My first mystery is in edits with Crooked Lane Books, and it's called Grounds for Murder, and it's a traditional mystery. Some people would call it a cozy mystery. It's a Florida set mystery, and it's in the vein of Carl Hiaasen, but it's not as edgy and not as cynical. But there's Florida wackiness, and there's a murder, and people try to solve the murder in the quirky Florida community. So that's a series, and the first book will be out in December with Crooked Lane Books. You can find it on the Penguin Random House site, or Amazon or IndieBound, and I think it'll be available locally too in bookstores. Depending on the pandemic, of course.
Yeah.
And then I'm working on book 2. I'm writing book 2 right now in the series.
So what made you move? You haven't left romance, but you're taking a little bit of a sabbatical from it.
Yeah, sort of. I wrote romance. I started in 2014 writing romance. So it's been 6 years actually next month. And my first 2 books were traditionally published in romance. And then I self-published the rest of my romance novels. Indie publishing, self-publishing is very common in romance now. All but the very biggest writers do it. It's far more lucrative to self-publish, but it's also a lot of work.
Yeah.
You have to learn advertising, and you have to hire people for your cover, and you have to hire editors. So I had a whole process. I would hire a developmental editor, content editor, and then a copy editor and a proofreader, and somebody to do my book Bible, and someone to do the cover design. And then I had to learn ads. And while it was lucrative, it was just a lot more work than I wanted. I want to just write. So part of me has always wanted to write a mystery. And I think that now it's become kind of difficult to write romance in some ways in this climate. So I wanted to write more of a story of justice, but also while keeping with sort of a light tone that cozy mysteries are known for.
Interesting. So how writing for the AP, how does that influence is it harder to get out of that mindset and go into fiction writing, or does it help?
I think it helps. I mean, being a journalist, I've been a journalist for a pretty long time now. So I think being a journalist gives me that discipline to write. Like, I don't experience writer's block because I just assume it has to be done or I won't get paid.
Yeah.
Like I can't say to my employer, the Associated Press, oh, I'm not going to write today, I have writer's block. It's not a possibility when you're a newspaper writer. So I think some of that is, I write every day about 1,000 words. And I think it's also given me the ability to write a first draft that's terrible, and I don't judge myself. I just write.
Yeah,
I can go back and edit, and I spend a lot of time in edits, but I don't worry about the first draft. I just do it.
That's really good writing advice too. It's like that. It's like a muscle that you've trained, and this worked for me, and because a lot of people get so stuck on the first draft, they don't even get it done.
Right. Like, I don't even go and I rarely reread in my first draft phase. Like right now I'm drafting, and so I just hit 30,000 words for the month. And I'm not going back and reading those 30,000 words. I'm just going to press on, and I'll do another 30,000 next month, and then I'll finish up with another 20,000 in August. And then I'll go back and do a deep dive in the edits. I know there's a lot of typos, a lot of plot holes, a lot of problems, but I'm not going to worry about it right now.
Yeah, well, you're staying in the right brain. You're staying in the creative space. when you're not bringing in the left brain, the editing side. And I think that's really, I do the same thing with my poetry, unless it's a poem that I like have to have ready for the next week. But usually I just get it down, and maybe even just snippets will go into the final poem, but I leave it, and let it percolate and gestate. So what is your writing process? Because you write, you're a journalist full time, and then you write full time, it sounds like. So how does that work?
Well, I don't write fiction full time. At this point, I'm probably spending about an hour to an hour and a half a day writing the 1,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go over that. Sometimes I've gone a little under this month. But my writing process, especially with the mystery, it really lies in plotting. I'm a pretty heavy and serious plotter. I use a software called Plotter, Plottr, and it's really, it helps you do a timeline. So, and it helps you do multiple timelines of your plot. So I have a timeline of the days that things unfold in the mystery, and then I have a plot line of what's going to happen in each chapter, and then I have a plot line of what's going on in my heroine's coffee shop, and what's going on in her love life, and what's going on with the secondary characters. So it allows me to visualize each plot line as it goes on by day. I mean, you can organize it however you want. I'm a big plotter. I'm not a pantser. It kind of terrifies me to not have a plan.
Yeah.
So I tend to plot almost every scene before I write.
And are you led by the characters, or are you led by the plot?
I would say, especially in the mystery, I'm led by the plot. In romance, it's a little easier to be led by the characters, and I think you probably should be, because it's a far more emotional genre to write in. And I know that when I've plotted romances and then gone to write, things have veered off in other directions. With a mystery, it's a little different. You kind of, at least I'm not, I'm a really new mystery writer. This is really only my second book, so I'm kind of feeling my way through. I want to know when things will unfold, and when I should release clues, and when I should reveal certain things. It makes me feel better, and it makes for easier writing to know that. And in some ways, mystery writing is a lot more like journalism. You know that certain things should be in certain places.
Yeah, that would make sense. Like you don't want to give away everything in the beginning of the piece. You want to keep the writer hooked.
Right.
And it does have this flow to it. Well, I was going to say good journalism, but
That's basic of news stories have a structure. And I think that mystery writing, I think especially in the mysteries, I'm not writing literary mystery fiction, but I think in mysteries, certain things have to be revealed at a certain point, and the body has to come at a certain point, and you have to solve the mystery. You have to know the ending before you write, I think. I mean, you have to know that justice will be served. That's the key point of a mystery, just like the key point of a romance is happy ever after. So you work backward from there.
And I could see how, like, especially this time period where it feels like we're just walking through muck. I'm sorry, we are almost in a mystery. Like, we don't know the outcome of this. Like, there's, speculation about how this is all going to go down, but there isn't this, like, okay, on August 10th, 2020, we are going to have a cure for COVID-19. Then you could like plan. I was thinking about how great it would be to have that like end point, but it's not there. So we're kind of in a mystery, like what's coming, how it's just.
That's very true. And I think that that's why people are reading a lot of genre fiction now, because they know how it's going to end. They know if they pick up a romance, it will end happily and people will fall in love and they will be happy. And if they pick up a mystery, justice will be served. And if they pick up a thriller, then, mysteries and secrets will be revealed and uncovered. I think that that's why genre fiction is really important right now.
That's really interesting. That's a good point. I'm actually reading a mystery right now, and I've never really been drawn to it, but it was referred to me. I think it's oh gosh, I can't see it. I should have had it ready, but it's piled under books and I don't want to go grab it. But it's about a Philadelphia cop and her daughter, her sister, and her sister's an opioid addict. And
Oh.
it came out this year. It's a really interesting book, and I'm like hooked, like right away. And I'm like, oh, this is just so refreshing to get hooked by a book. You know, it doesn't happen that often for me anymore. And it's just, so that's really interesting. So have you always been a writer?
I would say so. I mean, I read a lot when I was a kid, and I would write these little books. And I assumed, I mean, in high school, I wanted to be a journalist. So I kind of knew that that was the direction I would go in. And I toyed with the idea of writing a romance novel when in my 20s, but it was way, you know, it was very different back then. And I was so focused on being a journalist. I couldn't imagine getting an agent and pitching my books. It just seemed insurmountable to me. And so I didn't really do anything with that desire until I was in my 40s, you know, until 6 years ago. So, and then I wrote my first book, and I got an agent, and, you know, she sold the book to a small romance publisher, and it was a great experience.
What was the shift for you? What enabled you? Was it the hitting 40 and being like, all right, if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it? Or
Partially, yeah, and partially it was a bit of self-preservation. I mean, I'm a journalist, and I work for a wonderful company, the Associated Press, and we are. I'm really blessed to work for a company that is, you know, probably more stable than most news businesses, and that's a great thing. But in the news business, you never know where you're going to be in 5 years. You just don't. I mean, there's been so many of my friends that have been laid off, probably people you know. I've been laid off in the news industry, and I wanted to do something that was different. I wanted to essentially have a hobby that would take my mind away from the things that I was writing about in my day job. I wanted control over a world that could end well.
I love that. Yeah, that makes sense, because I'm sure the stuff you're writing about, it can be really heavy and overwhelming, and you had taken a little bit of a break, I believe, not that long ago, and for the same reason people want to read genre fiction, you want to have, I mean, I have seen every romance movie there is, and there's the same formula, but it still satisfies me so much I mean, I'll watch like the silliest ones, but I mean, that's the one genre that just like always gets me, even though, okay, this is the last 10 minutes and they're going to break up right now, but then get back together, and it's just so comforting. So I get that. So it was kind of your balm to write romance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I don't watch romantic movies. Like, I've never seen Titanic.
Oh, it's funny. I've seen every one. Oh my God.
Like, I've never, like, and I actually only saw Pretty Woman like 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Like, I'm not well versed in the romance movie canon, strangely.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped, and I think that's hindered me in romance. I actually only saw Beauty and the Beast about 3 years ago. I think that has hindered me quite a bit, actually, in romance.
Oh, that's funny. The live version, my brother I just love it. I'm the Beast.
Oh, well, it's a very enduring trope in romance. And if you don't know that trope, and if you're not familiar with it, I think it can make life a little harder in romance, honestly.
Yeah. So what would you tell your younger writer self?
I would say try now. Yeah. I wish I had self-published before I did. Like, so you asked what inspired me, and part of it was my age, and part of it was, you know, finding an outlet and the idea that I'm a journalist. But I'll be honest, part of it was also reading 50 Shades of Grey. And it's not because I love the book so much, but I realized that there was a new, because of the Kindle, you know, because of the rise of Kindles and not print books, there was a whole new world and a whole new potential readership. And so actually I first wrote my first chapter of my first book in 2012, and then I shelved it and I put it away. And I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I had written it, and I wish I had self-published it in 2012. If I could go back in time and do one thing in my life, it would be that.
It would be that. And you also publish on Wattpad too, correct? Is that what you said?
I do. Yeah, I am. I do things a little differently than some indie authors. I actually, I publish on a serial fiction app called Radish. And I also publish on something called Wattpad, which is, it's sort of serial fiction, but it's a fiction platform. I'm one of 200 paid writers on Wattpad. There are millions of books there, but I happen to be one of the paid writers, and it's a wonderful thing. And they pitch your books to studios, TV and movie studios. And
100, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I make a decent amount of money from that too. It's an international readership. They have 70 million unique visitors a month. They're owned out of a company by Toronto, and I think they're really the future of fiction. I think that's where the great American novel, the great world novel will come from, is Wattpad eventually. It's a really, really unique and cool platform, and they prize diversity and they champion diversity in all forms, and they're very innovative compared to other publishers. They also have print books, but at the moment, all of their print books are YA.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So what are you reading right now, and what are some of your favorite writers?
What am I reading right now? Actually, right now, I'm actually reading a cozy mystery that is a Hallmark cozy mystery about a journalist who she is solving I just started, she's solving a hit and run car crash. It's fun. It's a snappy book.
What is considered a cozy mystery? Because I don't do that.
Okay, so I think it probably, like, cozy mystery is, some people say Agatha Christie's a cozy mystery, but basically it's a mystery where there's not a lot of gore, and there's not a lot of swearing, and there's not any on-page sex. So it is very different than what I write. Like, I write very high heat romance, very sexy romance. But cozy mystery is more in the vein of, if you see Hallmark mysteries, it would be like that. Or if you've seen, I'm trying to think of what, like Murder, She Wrote would be a cozy mystery.
Heart to Heart.
Yeah, sure. Heart to Heart.
But
there's a really good British one. There's a lot of British cozy mysteries. Like, a lot of your British BBC mysteries would be classified as cozy. Father Brown, Death in Paradise. That's a really fun cozy mystery series. But I think that you could also make an argument that, like, Janet Ivanovich is cozy mystery. It's what I like about it is the voice is often a blend of, like, chick lit, first person voice, very fun and fresh and funky and funny, combined with usually sort of a B plot of a love interest. And then you have the amateur sleuth. That's the other sort of trope, is the amateur sleuth. And it's usually a woman. Usually it's a woman who's a little older, 30 plus. Although there are some younger, young adult cozy mysteries. And sometimes they're paranormal, with, like, witches and ghosts and cats that talk. And usually there's an animal, like my heroine has a dog named Stanley. Sometimes there's baking or crafts. Mine's set in a coffee shop.
Is most of the readers women?
Yeah, not as much as maybe romance. I have noticed that there's a number of men, and there's a new sort of publishing trend right now called a brozy, Brozy, and it's about they're cozy mysteries, but they're about more masculine things, like hunting or fishing, but they're still with the amateur sleuth, who solves a local mystery, usually in a smaller community, but not always. I happen to love Cleo Coyle's Coffee House Mysteries. Stephanie Bond, Body Movers, is a cozy mystery that's really fun. I just read one called A Deadly Inside Scoop, which is set in Ohio. And it's about a woman who opens an ice cream shop in the winter, in the dead winter in Ohio. So it was very quirky and fun.
Wow. So, who are your favorite authors?
For romance, I would say Lisa Kleypas is really good. She's a historical author. I love an author named Kara McKenna. She writes really beautiful erotic romance, like really, really beautiful literary erotic romance that stays within genre conventions, but it's gorgeous. I can't recommend her enough. Charlotte Stein is another erotic romance author that's super smart, super literary, love her stuff. Tiffany Rice is another one. Those are probably my go-to for romance. I generally like contemporary romance. I do like a little historical, sometimes paranormal. I don't mind a vampire or two. I'm not really into like werewolves, but yeah, I would say that those authors, and Nora Roberts is great. I wouldn't say she's one of my favorites, but I think she's a really interesting author for romance for romance writers who are learning to study.
That's a good, yeah. God, how many books has she written?
A lot. She's also she's no longer writing romance. She's writing more just like straight fiction. So it's interesting to see her evolution.
Yeah.
She started in category romance, writing those very short 50,000 word books, and now she's in general, fiction. So it's interesting.
Wow, it's like one. That's what Lisa Unger. She's like, she does one book a year.
Mm-hmm.
She's writing a book and she's editing a book at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
and just like submits them. She's got this where she doesn't even have to like pitch a story. And it's like, I'm sure that's what Nora Roberts like. She just writes a book a year. And so you said you don't get writer's block, but where do you get your inspiration? Like for your mystery, is it like, what's the spark that gets, or even like, what's the spark of a romance?
Well, for the mystery, I wanted to tell a fun and quirky Florida story. So a lot of it is kind of based on, things I've seen or heard, or funny things, or things in my imagination. So it's really, it's really a tale about the spark is solving the murder, and making that as interesting as possible. For a romance, it's a little more emotional. For a romance, it's like, how do you make two people fall in love,
Yeah.
And plus the lust factor, which is really fun. It's fun to write. Like I'm writing a romance story now on Wattpad. It's just for free. It's absolutely for fun. I put out a chapter about every 10 days. It's kind of a serial novel. It's like a really crazy premise, but it's just fun. And that actually provides this creative spark that helps my other writing that's not sexy and not crazy. I mean, the cozy is crazy, but the Wattpad story is really out there. So
it's like you're living in 3 different worlds.
Yeah.
4, I guess, because you've got your own life, and then you write for the Associated Press, and then you
have a life,
you have the romance, and then you're in the mystery. And it's funny, like, even when you think about it, like I'll be reading a book, and it's like your external world is quiet, but the internal world, like, and being a writer, you're having these wild adventures, and you're in your couch or your living room or your desk.
Completely. I mean, and I think that's really helped during the pandemic to have those worlds to escape to, because like you say, we don't know what's going to happen, but I know what's going to happen in my books, and it's fun. I mean, that's the fun part. That's the awesome part of being a writer, is knowing that your characters are going to turn out a certain way. And actually, the thing I'm writing on Wattpad, I should say, I actually decided that I don't think it's going to be a romance. I don't think it's going to end happily. I think this is going to be more of a love story. And I don't know if my readers are going to be happy at the end.
Was that a decision? Was that a decision you made, or the characters kind of let you know that's what's going to happen?
I think with that, it was more the characters and more the scene and the plot and the setup. Because even though I'm writing it kind of live, I know what's going to unfold. I haven't plotted it as heavily as the mystery, but I know what'll unfold and how it will unfold. And I realized that it wouldn't be true to the characters if they just marched off into happiness. So I think I've never written a story that didn't end happily. So.
Well, I just read Normal People, and I don't know if you've read that. And then there's a Hulu mini series about it. I guess it's considered young adult, but I mean, I won't give
a lot about it.
But it leaves their future open-ended, and it isn't the shiny, rosy. And it was so interesting to watch because you're so in love with these characters, and they're in love with each other. But it's like life has different paths sometimes away. And you're left like going like, well, do they get back together, or is it, it kind of, so that's kind of in the air almost. It was a bit refreshing, but it also allowed the reader to fill in the gaps after. Like maybe some people you know, what does happen with them, and you get to make that decision almost as a reader.
Right.
And so,
Right. Yeah, because mine is very, I mean, I've heard about Normal People and I've been wanting to read it or watch it. I've heard a lot of good things about it. I think that mine is going to end very definitively. But
got
it's not going to be pleasant. And it's going to be really interesting. The readers on Wattpad are very vocal. The one great thing about Wattpad is that people can comment by line if they want, and they sometimes do. So you get a lot of this great feedback about what your readers really love and what they don't love. They're very vocal about both. So I'm going to take them on a little ride, and it's going to be fun and sexy, and then I'm probably going to break their hearts.
Oh, but you know, I'm sure being a journalist like prepares you kind of to you're I wouldn't say hardened, but you know, you're not so sensitive to outside, because there's always feedback when you're a journalist. More,
I'm not, it's so like, and I know that for people who write fiction, and for people, especially new fiction writers, when they get their first 1 star on Goodreads, it like slays them. It like, you know, it's like a knife to the heart. And I get that, you know, we pour our hearts into our books and they're like our babies. I don't feel like, I'm pretty numb about stuff like that. I mean, I've been a journalist for, you know, 20 something years. So I've had people say a lot of really terrible things to me, sometimes to my face. Like when I was 23, somebody came up to me maybe 24, somebody came up to me at a school board meeting. I was covering a school board meeting in New England. And they were like, I hope your children have cancer.
oh my God.
I was really upset at the time. And now I'm just like, whatever. Like considering what people say to me online and email me when I write like a political story, like literally no one can say anything about my fiction that would hurt my feelings more than what people have already said. So they'd have to really, really try. And trust me, no one in any of the books I've written have even come close, like even remotely. So.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I wouldn't say it's lucky for you, but it really does liberate your romance and your mysteries, and to just write what you want. And
because I actually love like reviews that, you know, obviously I don't like just the 1 star, the drive-by 1 stars that people click and they don't, I mean, that's fine, whatever, I don't, but you know, if somebody writes a really thoughtful 2 star, or if my favorite reviews are actually like 2 and 3 stars, because I learn from them. And I really, you know, I love reading what people write, because the other thing is sometimes people will say the exact thing that makes others want to read the book. Like one time somebody said, this is like a telenovela, and they gave it like 3 stars. Well, good. I want you to say that, because obviously that is something that people want. Some people want, not everybody. If I read a 3 star review or 2 star review that says it's a telenovela, I'm going to 1-click that, because that's what I want to read.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes people are like, oh my God, there's so much sex. It's like, well, no kidding. She's an erotica writer in the book. Like, of course there's sex. But that signals to other people that they want to buy it. So I'm happy when people, you know, are critical of my books. I'm happy about it.
Yeah, and then you also learn, like you remember, it's a writer workshop basically.
Yeah.
You know, and if you have a specific weakness and it keeps coming up, then you will focus on that weakness and fix it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a gift. I mean, if you can like not crumble.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also being a journalist, you know, I write, you know, there's times when like today I wrote 2 stories. Like it's probably half of the papers that pick up my stories won't even put my byline on it. So
Wow.
I have to let go of my words every single day. I might write the best news story of the day in the country. I might write a great news story. It might get picked up by the New York Times, but that doesn't mean my name will be on it. That doesn't mean I just have to let it go. So I think I'm probably different from fiction writers and a lot of fiction writers, because I do have that kind of, well, it's out in the world. You know?
That's good advice too. You know, like that's good to like keep writing and keep at
more words. I mean, somebody told me that in journalism. Like when I was an intern at KABC in Los Angeles, I was a broadcast TV intern, and the mentor, she took me aside and she was like, it's a bad day, I had a bad day. She was like, it doesn't matter. They're words. There are more of them tomorrow. And it's true. Like, we can mess up, we can write a book that's mediocre, and there's more words.
More words. That's lovely. So what would be your holy grail piece of writing advice?
Read a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Read a lot and read widely,
Mm-hmm.
and really study. If you're, especially, I think it's really important for genre fiction. I mean, I think a lot of people say, oh, I want to write a romance novel and make a lot of money. Well, then you have to study the market. You have to study the genre. You know, the best thing I did to study the genre, you know, was to read a lot of Harlequins, because Harlequin, you know, it's not easy to tell the story of two people falling in love and have it be emotional and sexy and fun and interesting in 50,000 words. That's a really, really difficult thing to do. People say it's easy, but it's really not. Like, I challenge anyone to do that and do it well and do it in a voice and do it well enough to sell it.
Yeah.
So I would say study and look at the structure of the books that you, especially in genre. I have no advice for anyone trying to be a literary fiction person, because I just don't. But I would say read and study the craft and the structure, because that's what readers want.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I think it's important to, like, if you really love a book, why do you love it? Like, what does that book do for you? What is the, you know, why are you hooked with right away? What,
well, yeah, if you really love a book, definitely. But I would also say, if you really dislike a book, I mean, I mean, why did 50 Shades of Grey sell so much? You know, there are reasons why it sold a lot. And reading it is very, very instructive. You know, I mean, I also, as much as the book wasn't really for me, it was very enlightening. And it also taught me that that is by no means the worst book written in today's society.
Yeah.
You know, like, I read tons of books that are far worse than that, have far worse messages, and are far poorly written. So, you know, it's all relative, but it's like the reasons that went behind that being so popular and making so much money are very valuable.
Mm-hmm. So you have something to share with us.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah, I could share.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm going to share actually a little snippet from my book called Tell Me a Story. This giant thing was a 6-part serial novel. And so I originally wrote it as a serial novel. Right now it's on Wattpad, paid. And there are audiobooks of this as well on Audible and Amazon. So basically, this is the story of a bookstore owner in Orlando who she does something called Story Brothel, which you might have heard of here in St. Petersburg, where people pay to have other readers read to them. So she goes and she owns a bookstore, and she does this thing called Story Brothel, and a very handsome and mysterious man pays her to read.
Oh, interesting.
So that's the premise of, that's their quote, meet cute. That's how they meet. And so this is the story of their relationship, but that's how they meet. So.
Okay.
All right, so this is chapter 1. I wanted him the second I looked into his steel blue eyes. How much? He asked. It was a sexy voice, a deep voice, and I smiled, a smile that alluded to everything but promised nothing, aware of appearing coy and knowing and not too eager. I was in the mood to flirt. Before I could answer, my friend Sarah broke in. It's $2 a minute. $2, 1 minute of reading. Half goes to charity, half goes to the writer, but you can negotiate with the writer if you know what I mean. The man smiled and ran a thumb over his full bottom lip as he looked at me up and down. Sarah laughed and wiggled her dark brows. That's why I called it Story Brothel. It's between the reader, she clapped him on the shoulder, and the writer. God, I love this. I feel like a madam, like the Heidi Fleiss of Florida fiction. She reached to squeeze my arm, then leaned into me and lowered her voice playfully. Remember, half for charity, no skimming. I rolled my eyes. Like I'd do that. Sarah stood on her tiptoes and kissed me on the cheek. He looks rich. Maybe he'll pay you extra so you can save the bookstore, she whispered. I scowled, not wanting a reminder of work. This was my rare night out, a time when I wasn't buried in orders or paperwork or my writing. It was when I transformed myself from serious shop owner into romance writer, like some Pulp Fiction superheroine. Glasses off, wild curly hair down, blood red lipstick staining every napkin and cocktail rim in my path. And maybe this man's mouth in a short while. I was long overdue for male attention. At least that's what I told myself as I took in his charcoal suit, his crisp white shirt, and the platinum glint of a wristwatch dial. I hadn't been kissed in a long time, not well at least, and not by a man this interesting looking. So,
story brothel. I have never heard of that.
yeah.
It's like a fetish, I guess, having someone read to you.
Well, no, I mean, maybe, but this was just the way it was set up. I've actually been to one here in St. Pete, and it wasn't a sexual thing, like people just read their whatever stories. But in my story, yeah, in my book, other people read other things, but she decided to read her erotica to this gentleman.
Thank you so much. You gave us so many good tips like that we haven't seen in other episodes about different ways to publish, different genre writing, how to balance the day job with the fun stuff, or maybe the day job is the fun stuff, but and just you're always a pleasure and a wealth of information. So thank you for sharing all your knowledge. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining episode 12 of Typewriter Talks. We will be back next Tuesday. And if you want to know more about Keep St. Pete Lit, we're at keepstpetelit.org. We have online writing classes. We have writers meetups, book clubs, poetry and storytelling open mics, all kinds of great stuff. So thank you so much. Thank you, Tamara. And everyone keep writing and keep reading.
Right.
Yeah. Keep reading. All right.